Hi everyone, I'm Nadia, and in today's video my mom is making a beautiful textured sea-themed resin wall art. This beginner-friendly tutorial will show how to create texture in your resin, so if you're interested, continue watching. And for this project, she's using an indented frame, and this is important to make sure that you have plenty of room for your layers of resin. There was a little spot missing here, so she's covering that up to make sure that the resin doesn't seep through. Now she'll be using some wood glue, and she applies that all along the edges of the frame and also on top of that area where a little spot was missing, and this will ensure that all of the edges are sealed. She has a collection of pebbles, and she starts to add some into a cup. And in her second cup, she pours in some white sand. She mixes in a combination of some white sand, some beige sand, and some brownish sand. And she mixes that all together. Now, instead of mixing this into her resin, an easier and faster way to do the first layer with your sand and pebbles is to use wood glue. So she pours in some wood glue into her cup with the pebbles and also adds in a pouring medium. I'll have all the products that you see in this video listed in my description, so if you want to give this tutorial a try, be sure to check that out. She tried to place her sand into the frame, but the sand was too clumpy and wasn't spreading out well, so she places it back into the cup and adds in some water to make the sand more fluid. She's able to easily spread out the sand onto the surface. She starts from the top of the frame and works her way down until the middle lower area of the frame. And at the bottom of the frame, she starts to add on her pebbles. Again, she's using a wooden stick to help spread them out. With the little bit of sand that she has left over in her cup, she adds in some more of the wood glue and water to fill in that blank area. And now she adds in some more pebbles. Before the wood glue dries, she adds in some shells as well. She allows that layer to dry and then comes back to mix in her resin. For this project, she's using Art Resin, which is a non-toxic and food-safe resin, and it has a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. So in some smaller cups, she pours in equal parts of the A and B, and then mixes those two parts together in a larger cup. I'll have Art Resin linked in my description if you want to give them a try. With a wooden stick, she makes sure to scrape out all of the resin from the cup. And she mixes the two parts together well for several minutes or until you can no longer see any streaks in your resin. Then she separates it into smaller cups to add in her pigments. And she adds in a few drops of this beautiful emerald green pigment into 2 of her cups. And then decides to add in that same pigment into her third cup as well, but this time adds a few more drops to make the color more intense. Then she adds in this beautiful aqua blue alcohol ink into her smaller cup. Now that she has some different variations of her pigmented resin, she's ready to start pouring into the frame. She pours her resin with less pigment towards the center and bottom area of the frame. Then takes her more pigmented resin and pours it near the top of the frame. She's using a silicone stick to make sure that all of the areas are covered and that the resin reaches the very edge of the frame. She uses a torch gun to pop any air bubbles, and whenever you're using a torch gun, you always want to pay extra attention that you're moving your torch gun quick enough so you're not burning your resin. She uses that same silicone mixing stick to help blend out the pigmented resins. Using an alcohol wipe, she carefully goes over the frame to make sure that there are no drops of resin. She allows this layer to harden and comes back the next day to do one more layer. Here she's preparing a vinyl sheet, which she'll be using to achieve texture in this layer of resin. She prepares her art resin and again pours equal parts of the A and B. Once it's mixed well, she separates it into smaller cups, as she'll be adding in her pigments once more to achieve a little bit more depth. Again, she's using the emerald green pigment. This time she adds in Deep Pond's alcohol ink in the shade Intense Teal. She sets everything aside once everything is mixed in well, and now this time she'll be using some painter's tape to protect the frame from any drops of resin. When you allow your resin to sit for 5 to 10 minutes, the air bubbles will rise to the top of the cup, so to get rid of these air bubbles, she's carefully using the torch gun. And now she's ready to pour. She uses a wooden stick to make sure that the resin has reached the very edges of the frame. And again uses a torch gun to pop any air bubbles. And now she places on her vinyl sheet. To help the vinyl scrunch up a little bit, she's going over it with a heat gun. And to help the vinyl keep the shape that she wants, she's placing on some pebbles on top. Then she comes back the next day to remove the vinyl. There are some areas where the resin has gone up the side of the frame, but because this is just the next day from the pour, it's very easy to remove. So my mom is using an X-Acto knife to help scrape off some of the resin. And once she gets a good grip on it, she can just pull it right off. This is something you want to do as soon as possible so that the resin doesn't harden too much, which makes the cleanup process a lot harder. And here's the final product. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. Follow me on my Instagram, Summer Girl Designs, and my mom's Instagram, Wild Heart Resin Art.